Let's take a look at the reading 7 quiz. This is the first reading from Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. Question 1. Who is the spokesperson for the colonizer? Let me perhaps make this bigger if I can. I'm trying to make it bigger, not bigger, but you can see in the first excerpt there, in the colonies, the official legitimate agent, the spokesperson for the colonizer and the regime of oppression is the police officer or the soldier. So the face of colonization, the as he calls it, the spokesperson, the front person, um, the image of the colonizer is the soldier and the police officer, which is I think quite important for Fanon because this is about violence. This chapter, and if the representative of the colonizer is the police officer, the soldier, it's the threat of violence, which is the most important thing. So I think that's quite interesting and important. Question 2. What feature divides the compartmentalized colonized world? Second excerpt there. This compartmentalized world, this world divided in two, is inhabited by different species. The singularity of the colonial context lies in the fact that economic reality, inequality, and enormous disparities in lifestyles never managed to mask the human reality. Looking at the immediacies of the colonial context, it is clear that what divides this world is first and foremost what species, what race one belongs to. It's very problematic, obviously, because the notion of race is problematic. It has no real biological, scientific basis. The notion that Europeans and non Europeans are of different species is, of course, not literally true. So it's not really clear what Fanon means here, except that what he's saying, I think, is quite important. It, I think the background of the statement, the reason it was so surprising is the influence, the great influence of Marxism, especially at that time amongst leftist intellectuals like Fanon. Uh, and under Marxist theory, the most important thing is class, social class, your economic class. But what he's saying here, I think, is that in the colonial situation, the most important thing is race, or at least perceptions about race. That was a new thing, and that's one of the things that made Fanon radical and made a lot of other leftists, white leftists, basically uncomfortable with his thought. Not only the theme of violence, but also the theme of race. That what you can't understand the colonial situation unless you take into account race. And I think he's probably right about that. It doesn't quite fit into any Marxist framework, and that you have to get out of that thinking to some degree if you're going to understand colonialism, which is basically racist in its ideology. It's extremely interesting and challenging, I would say. Question 3. What is truth? What is good? Well, if you read it, you know that what that question means. It's what is true and good according to the colonized. And he says here, the question of truth must also be taken into consideration. For the people, only fellow nationals are ever owed the truth. No absolute truth, no discourse on the transparency of the soul can erode this position. In answer to the lie of the colonial situation, the colonized subject responds with a lie. Behavior toward fellow nationalists is open and honest, but strained and indecipherable towards the colonists. Truth is what hastens the dislocation of the colonial regime, what fosters the emergence of the nation. Truth is what protects the natives and undoes the foreigners. So that's truth. I mean, that's very, very provocative. For the colonized during the struggle, truth is whatever helps get rid of the colonizer. In the colonial context, there is no truthful behavior, and good is quite simply what hurts them most. So in this situation, this crazy situation of colonialism, uh, truth and good, or whatever hurts the colonizer. Pretty amazing thing to say, really. Question 4. Fanon says that in colonial countries, only the peasantry is revolutionary. Why? He says here the peasantry is systematically left out. And the peasantry is the subsistence farmers, the mass of the people in a non-industrial society or pre-industrial society, whatever you want to call it. Most of the people make their living by having small parts of land to grow subsistence crops on. That's the peasantry, as opposed to the urban people, the proletariat, or the industrial workers, the people who live in towns. The peasantry is systematically left out of most of the nationalist party's propaganda, but it is obvious that in colonial countries only the peasantry is revolutionary. It has nothing to lose and everything to gain, which is part of Fanon's political philosophy, I suppose. That the people, I guess, who will really make the revolution that will get rid of the colonizer will be the peasantry because they don't see any choice. They have nothing to lose, which is kind of an echo of Rousseau's "You have nothing to lose but your chains" from his social contract. But as opposed to, like, if you live in an urban area, yeah, and you might be somebody who's been compromised in a way by colonialism. That is, you might be doing okay, or you might have been, if you're intellectual or been educated in European style schools, you might have been affected by European values. So you might, in some way or another, have a kind of a stake in preserving, maybe not just, maybe not colonialism as a whole, but parts of the colonizer's society. Whereas the peasantry has none of that. Peasantry basically has gotten nothing from colonialism, so it's nothing to lose. So it's the most revolutionary, most willing to engage in revolution.